Gita Jayanti. So Gita Jayanti is the day when Lord Krishna had spoken the Bhagavad Gita to Arjun 5,000 years ago. And that day is coming up on December 11th. We'll have a recitation of Bhagavad Gita on that day. And then the following Sunday, we'll have a Mahayagya. So more information on that will be coming up shortly. He's going to get us into the mood so that we can get an introduction of Bhagavad Gita. We can understand its significance, the practical application of it in our lives, and so on and so forth. So if I may request all of you devotees, please come forward. We have more devotees coming in during the class. So we'll make room for everyone. Please come forward. We can just be seated, just settle here. So thank you very much. Without further ado, let's all welcome Maharaj by loudly chanting Haribol! Haribol! Haribol!
Okay. Thank you very much, Vikashananda Krishna Prabhu. So, it's very cold out right now. So, we're going to have a little bit unusual class this evening. It's going to be an introductory class. Originally, I scheduled myself to do it a little more complex class on the Shikshashtaka. But Shikshashtaka are the 8 verses written by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So instead, because we don't have so many people here this evening, we'll just do an introductory class on the Bhagavad Gita and recite one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, and the class will be shorter, probably about less than half an hour. So, chant first. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Mopi Janabalaba Iri Badajagopte Mopi Janabalaba Iri Badajagopte Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranchana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranchana Jamuna Tera Banachare Yamuna Tera Banachare Jayaranbu Madhava Kunja Bikagoswami Jayaradu Madhuva Kunja Bikagoswami Gopi Janabalaba Girivadachagute Gopi Janabalaba Girivadachagute Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jairampu Madhava Kunya bkgoswami Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya bkgoswami Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo, Hare Bo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivakacharya Also Tera Sitashi Shimad, His Divine Grace. Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Vedas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Machuranam Ki Jai. Jagadada Swami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasadevi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. All glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees. All glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Samani Chinamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Jatari. So today we are going to answer a very important question, perhaps the most important question in the Vedic literatures. And we're going to start by reading from the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled Devotional Service. That's the name of the chapter. And in this chapter, Krishna answers this very important question. So we're just going to read Arjuna's question. It's a very important question because it really defines what Hinduism is, what the Vedic literatures are, what Sanatana Dharma is, what the goal is. I mean, it's really at the very root. And most people don't understand, or at least have the misunderstanding of the answer to this question. Very, very interesting. So Omagana Timiranda Shah Gadanjana Shlakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shikadvena Maha. Or offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. I'm just going to read the verse and Prabhupada's commentary, and then we'll speak a little bit. So Arjuna Vachevam Satata Yukta Me Bhaktastvam Maripasate Ye Chapyaksharam of Yoktang Atesham Ke Yogavitama. Arjuna inquired, listen to the question, which are considered more perfect, those who are properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Okay. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains very nicely. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal. So what does that mean? Personal means him. Impersonal means basically the energy of God, and the universal means all the different energies. Okay? And has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. That means just the energy. You find this quite often. People say, we want to merge into the oneness, or see the light, or we are one with the Brahma Jyoti, or the Jyoti. We find in this chapter that of a different process for a realization of the absolute truth. Bhakti Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Also in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten anturatmana shadavan vajate yomam salme yuktatamo mataha. He says of all these different types of yogis. And what are the different types of yogis? There's the Hatha Yoga, which is sometimes called Raja Yoga. There's Jnana Yoga. There's Sankhya Yoga. And there's Bhakti Yoga. So of all those different types of yogis, Krishna says that is the best type of yogi. Why is it the best? We'll hear about that. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga devotional service to him is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not a material body, but he is a spiritual spark. And the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the 7th chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again, in the 8th chapter, it is said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And that, at the end of the 6th chapter, the Lord that's the verse I just cited. The Lord clearly says that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in their preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. It's hard to understand how they'd be devoted to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the absolute truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and not manifest. And so factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter, that's the universal form, that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the absolute truth. So someone may say, this is very philosophical. Personal, impersonal. I just want to do puja. And many people are like that. But it's very practical too. Because in this world, everybody has their personal aspect and their energy. Energy means, let's say, their car. Like he has a nice Tesla. That's his energy, if you could say that. So, anyway, and all of his different possessions and everything like that. So that's the impersonal aspect of Nanda Gopal. So if I, let's say, worship his car, You fixed the windshield. Good. So if I worship his car, you know, is it going to please him that much? I don't think so. But if I become friends with him, if I think of him, if I call him on the phone, this is what Krishna says in the Gita, then that pleases him. Because the whole point is, as Krishna says in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakja mam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tatvataha tatvato tattvato vishate tad anantaram. And this verse is spoken right after a very interesting verse about Brahman. Brahmabhuta prasanama, nasochati nakangshati, samak sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param, where Krishna says, Brahmabhuta prasanatma, one who's actually realized the Brahman, he becomes prasanatma. His soul is very happy. Nasochati, he's not lamenting about anything, or wanting anything in this material world. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. He sees what? All living entities equal. Madbhaktim labate param. And this way he can come to devotional service. That's a preliminary state. So in other words, the only way you can come to Brahman is by understanding what Brahman is. And Brahman is, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedanti tat tattva ziram tattvam yad jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti sabdyate. Brahman is not simply an undifferentiated energy. It has three aspects. There is the undifferentiated, there's the energy. Then the localized aspect of Brahman, which is the Paramatma, or the super soul in everyone's heart. And then ultimately, Bhagavan. And of course we know Krishna's too, Bhagavan Swayam. So how do we know this? I think this is a very important question to ask. Because sometimes people say, you Hare Krishnas, or you personalists, or you Vaishnavas, that's your opinion. But I have a different opinion. You know, we're supposed to be all nice members of the Hindu sects. So I may have an opinion that Brahman is the highest. Okay. Or I may have an opinion that you can worship any demigod you want. Yatopat, isn't it? So, you can worship any demigod. You know, so we have all these different varieties. You know, we got a real interesting variety under the heading of Hinduism. And we respect everybody, of course. Amanina Amanadena. Kirtaniya Siddhari. So it's interesting. So why do we believe in this? Well, I'll explain why. Because the Vedic literatures teach this. It's our standard of knowledge. There's this interesting branch of philosophy, which is called epistemology, which means how do you know what you know? So we, or I, or Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, is speaking like this, not because it just happens to be his opinion amongst many different opinions of people in India. No. Because it's the opinion of the Vedas. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, the Rig Veda, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Pada Pashanti At Surya. Everybody's heard that verse before? That's the opinion of the Rig Veda. It's the opinion of the Upanishads. And there's so many different Upanishads, like the Gopal Tapani Upanishad and others. So that's why we're teaching these. And Bhagavad Gita is so specific. As I quoted this one verse from the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham. But so many other verses, Manmana, Bhavamat, Bhakto, Mad, Yashimam, Namaskuru, Mami, Vashasi, Sacham, Te, Pratijye, Priyosi Me, Sarvadam, Parichaja, Mame Kam Sharanam Brasha. So why are there all these different opinions amongst people who follow the Vedas? Why is that? Because they're taking indirect interpretations, which Srila Prabhupada sort of hints at in this particular purport. In other words, when Krishna says, surrender to me, or there's no truth superior to me, matak paraturam nanyat, kinchirasti dhananjaya. Everybody knows that verse? You know that verse? Sutre manigana iva. Everything. There's no superior thing to me. Matak parataram. Nanyat. Nanyat. That means not. There's nothing, you nut. So, it doesn't mean that anyway. There is nothing superior to me. I sarvamidam. Proktam. Sutre, manigana, iva. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So people take that verse and they say, well, Krishna doesn't mean himself. He means something else. He means the energy. Just like we talked about Nanda Gopal in his car. And Nanda Gopal, he said, give me some prasadam. So I bring it to his car. Or whatever. He said, no, I'm hungry. So, anyway, so this is why we and the Vedas, and the conclusion of the Vedas is that God is a person. That's the ultimate realization. There's one God, Ekala Ikshara Krishna Adasabdavricha, and as is going to be taught this particular chapter, the easiest method of achieving him is by meditating on him, performing bhakti yoga. Because if you try, as Prabhupada said here, very interesting in the purport, that transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. And I was just thinking, how can you be devoted to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti? It's like almost like a sarcastic statement here Prabhupada makes. So, even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Can you be devoted to something impersonal? Devotion means that devotee and the object of devotion. Just like if someone says, I love you, then there has to be a person that you love, or an animal. Some people love their dogs. But there has to be an entity. Now, if you simply say, I love what? Jalebis. It's not the same thing, because that's impersonal. That means jalebis give you satisfaction. That's translating the word love in that particular context. Means jalebis give you happiness and satisfaction, or tintillate your senses or something like that. But love means there always has to be an entity to love. And then the reciprocation. There has to be reciprocation. So in other words, the process, as Krishna will explain later on in this chapter, this famous verse, Klesha dikaturastesham vyaktahi tam, dehavadbir advapyate, that for those who are embodied, meditation on the impersonal is difficult, or basically impossible. So the process is easier. The goal is defined by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's why Krishna, or Arjuna, is asking the question in this particular chapter, to define it for us. We accept the version of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And Srila Prabhupada, when he presented Bhagavad Gita, he did label or did title his Bhagavad Gita as Bhagavad Gita as it is, rather than Bhagavad Gita as I'd like to present my own philosophy. Because many people would utilize the Bhagavad Gita to present their own philosophy. And so we accept the fundamental, original teaching of the Vedic literatures and of the Bhagavad Gita. And that's how we know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The goal is to meditate on Krishna, and the process is to meditate on Krishna. So, anyway, so this is what is discussed here in this particular verse, Bhagavad Gita. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Realization. So,
Yeah.
Maharaj, for
The
a soul,
person, Bhagavan, yeah.
yes, yes. So, jiva, or a soul who is just aspiring for a spiritual path or a seeking truth, he doesn't know anything besides that he has faith in you and in your words and Srila Prabhupada.
Not faith in me, and probably not. I mean, of course, we have faith in Prabhupada, but the point is faith in the Vedic literatures. Yasha Devi Para Bhakti Yada Devi Tatakuru Tashaite Katita Prakashante Mahatmana. One who has faith in the Vedic literatures, and Guru, of course, then everything is revealed to one. Okay. So how do we know what we know? I think that's the first question that we need to ask. It's not simply that Prabhupada taught this, but when Prabhupada taught this, he also provided us with the word-by-word synonyms in the Bhagavad Gita. Not simply the Bhagavad Gita with its translations, but word-by-word synonyms, so we could actually see that this was the direct meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. So, yes, if one declares themselves to be followers of the Vedas, if one studies the Vedas, Vedaishtarsavar, Ahameva Vedu, as Krishna himself says, one has to come to the conclusion, and if one is honest, and if one is taking the direct meaning of the Vedas, one has to come to the conclusion that God is a person. And that person is Krishna. Of course, Krishna has various expansions, which are all non-different from him. Advaita, Achyuta, Anadi, Ananta Rupam, Ajam, Purana, Purusham, Navayovanam Cha, such as Balaram, Sankarshan, Prajuna, Lord Vishnu, and the different expansions, the Mahavishnu, Nrsimha, Kurama, Varaha. These are all manifestations of the same person. So one has to come to that conclusion if one's just honest. You know, it's a question of intellectual honesty. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, as far as the demigods, Krishna says, Aham Aryar Hidevanam. That means I'm the source of the demigods. Of course, he's the source of everything. In the 10th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo. I mean, everybody knows this verse. Matak Sarvam Pavartite. Iti Bhakva Bhajanti Bam Buddha Bam Samavata. Therefore, understanding that, what Machata Magata Pranat, Valyantas Cha Purasparam. Katyantas Chamam Nicham Tushanti Cha. Ramanti Cha. Therefore, the conclusion is Krishna's advocating it. And all the Vedas advocate it. And, you know, and all the sages advocate it. You know, in the 10th chapter of the Gita also. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma. Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. You are the supreme abode. I mean, this is Bhagavad Gita. Every self-respecting person who follows the Vedas accepts the Gita as an absolute source of knowledge. You know, what to speak of the Bhagavatam, what to speak. The other Vedic literatures. But the Gita is the most famous, most widely read book. So simply one studies the Gita as it is. Param Brahma, Param Dham, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Aham Vibhu. Everything's contained in that one verse. You are the supreme Param Brahma. You're the supreme aspect of spirit, Brahman. Think about it. Param Dhamma, the supreme abode. Pavitram, supreme pure. Idam Uttamam. And then Arjuna, in order just to clarify it even more, just to verify what Krishna has actually explained, Ahostvam Rishayak Sarve Devar Shir Naradas Tata. And all this is understood because the sages say the same thing. Asita, Devala, Vyasa, Narda. Sita, Devala, Vyasa. Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. And you are also saying the same thing. Isn't it? I mean, it's really, I love that verse. I mean, of course, this is, the 10th chapter has the 4 nutshell verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which begin with Aham Sarvasya Prabhu Matak Sarva Pravartate and Machata Magata Prana Tesham Sata Yuktanam, which is actually very assuring to those who are devoted and worship me with love. I give them the understanding by which they can come to me, and then Hamagyana Yantamaha, Shama Atmabhavashta, the next verse, Yana Dipena Vashvata, I get rid of their ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge. So, in other words, it's very clear what the conclusion of the Vedic literatures is. Krishna does not leave that up to any question in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. So, that's why I said this is like a nutshell question that's asked in the beginning of the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's not my opinion. It's not what Prabhupada is simply presenting. I mean, he is presenting it, but it's not Prabhupada's opinion. Prabhupada is representing Krishna. Like when Krishna says, I mean, please, no one get upset with this, but when Krishna says, Manmana, Namam Duskurtino Muda Prapajante Naradama Mayaya Pritagyana Asuram Bhavamashrita. Krishna talks about the people who don't surrender to him, and he calls them all sorts of names. Don't get offended with me. It's Krishna's statement. Or also the verse, Avajananti Mamuda. Those who think that I've assumed that I'm inferior to the Brahman. Avajananti Mamuda. Yeah, I know the rest of the verse. Who think that I am inferior to the Brahman, they're mudhas. Param Brahma, Ajanato, Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. Because they don't know my higher form. So Krishna says all these things, So really, if one wants to be a good follower of Sanatana Dharma, then this is Sanatana Dharma. It's not actually the word Sanatana Dharma means eternal, you could say eternal religious principles, but it actually means eternal nature of the soul, understanding the eternal nature of the soul. The word Dharma comes from the root which sustains something. So Sanatana means eternal. So, anyway, this is not my opinion, Prabhupada's opinion. We are simply presenting what Krishna says. So, who has a question? You have a question? Wait. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. In this discussion about personalism and impersonalism,
Yeah.
as we are going on this path of bhakti, it's a very personal process.
Yes.
But many times we go into a monotonous mode, which may end up in the sense
We got into a what?
a monotonous mode in our bhakti, in the sense that
In other words, niyam agraha, just
yes,
ritualistic.
and we treat is essentially the personal, sweet process of bhakti becomes more or less impersonal.
Yes.
And how can we avoid that? What are some ways that we can always be fully immersed in Krishna consciousness, do everything with our heart, not do things mechanically?
One way is to keep reminding ourselves, and the way we keep reminding ourselves is regularly hearing Shrushro Shradanasha Vasudeva Kataruchi Shanmahat Seveya Vipra Punya Tirtha Shevanat. So to regularly hear, regularly hear from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and you keep reminding ourselves, because we have a tendency, not only in religion, but in any aspect of our lives, to do things automatically after a while and not think about what you're doing. It just like comes out, or you even driving a car, it's like you're the automatic pilot. So sometimes, I've experienced driving my car when I drive to a location I've driven to many times before. I don't even remember getting there. And I'm the one driving. Anyone ever experienced that? Says, oh my God. So the problem that arises in any religious practice is there are certain, what we call rituals or repetitive types of behavior that are part of the process, right? So we tend to put ourselves, as I often say, on automatic pilot as we're doing those things. So whether it's chanting, certainly the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is the same mantra, isn't it? Isn't it? Yes? No? Yes. Every day, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So then I'm chanting Hare Krishna. I hope I have something nice for dinner today. So the mind just starts wandering. So we have to continually, by practice, pull it back. And remember, Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Purna Shuddha Nityamukto Vinatwam Nama Namano. That you're dealing directly with Krishna. Just like sometimes we're talking to someone and we're not actually either looking at them or thinking about them. It's just coming out of our mouths, and the person gets very upset because we're being very impersonal. So when we're talking to someone, we should realize that person we're talking to. We look at them in the eyes and everything like that. Imagine if I'm talking to Nanda Gopal. Yeah. Nanda Gopal, how's your work? It's very upsetting. So if we do the same thing with Krishna, then basically that's considered an offense on chanting. So we have to remember we're dealing directly with Krishna. All the aspects of devotional service, especially the chanting, but any aspect, deity worship or anything else that we're doing, is we're doing it for Krishna. And Krishna says, what is that? Brahmarpanam Brahma Havir Brahmagno Brahmaneo. Tam Brahmatena Gantavya Brahma Karma Samadhanam. If you're actually thinking like that and making a full contribution, a full attention, and working for Krishna in this way, and thinking of who you're doing, what you're doing, or who you're doing it for, then that activity becomes Brahman, or becomes spiritualized at that particular point. So the whole, so the whole point is to be Krishna conscious. And therefore, we have the injunction not to accept any more than necessary, and that also applies to different religious procedures. Because if someone gets too ritualistic and has too many little details of the rituals, you forget the reason you're doing what you're doing. Right? So therefore, we believe in the KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, Sadhu. Keep it simple. So, anyway, so the whole point is always remember who you're doing it for, and, don't accept more than necessary in terms of different rituals and practices, and just keep pulling your mind back. And hear regularly, as we said before. Hear regularly to remind yourself. Like every day in my own life, every morning I've listened to a class of Srila Prabhupada's. And that brings me back to the reason why I am doing what I'm doing. Purpose. So, good question. So, any other questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you so much for your class. Every time it's so simple and so practical. Just now when you were answering Advaita Chandra's question, you said keeping it simple.
Yeah.
So that sometimes is a little difficult to understand, that what is keeping it simple. Many times we hear that we have to do for Krishna first class and very elaborate, very opulent and nice. And kind of when we read Prabhupada's book, Prabhupada is kind of touching each and every point, like keeping our house very clean, keeping ourselves very clean,
That's
giving
simple.
attention to children. Like when all the things come in one day, it doesn't stay any more simple.
That's why I took sannyas. Well, whatever. Anyway, sorry about that. Well, life tends to get very complex, but we shouldn't make it more complex than we have to. And then somehow or other, if it does get complex outside of our control, then we use transcendental sound to keep pulling ourselves back. Now, one thing I do is if there's any like time and then I'm doing something with the hands and it's complex or whatever, I chant Hare Krishna to myself. You know, and Prabhupada would do the same thing. You know, so you chant, you know, let's say as you're cooking, and you're cooking something very complex because your husband is demanding a complex dinner that night. You know, a 20-course feast. And so you just go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. And it also helps you control your anger. Because you remember the goal. You know, the nice thing about chanting is you're always with Krishna. Your Krishna, your best friend, is there. And even if you can't remember another mantra, at least you can remember the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Krishna is directly there. Punashura Nityamukdam Vinatwam Nama Namino. He's non-different from the holy name, Nama Chintamani, as the verse goes that we quoted. And if you remember that's, to me, that's the easiest way to pull my mind back to remember the goal and remember Krishna. Because then whatever you're doing, other than giving a lecture, but anyway, whatever you're doing, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, isn't it? It's so sweet. Okay, nice question. So I just want to end with this particular announcement. As we're all aware, there are problems with members of our society and members of many different societies in Bangladesh right now. Everybody's aware of that. So we'd like to ask everyone, maybe I should just read this. There's a call for prayers for Bangladesh at all ISKCON temples. So this is very, very important because we pray to Krishna. We're asking Krishna to protect our devotees and all the religious minorities in Bangladesh. And so I'll read this. The International ISKCON Governing Body Commission and EC, under the chairmanship of Guru Prasad Swami, with the support of Global Communications Ministry, is calling upon all devotees and friends of ISKCON to join together this Sunday at ISKCON temples worldwide to offer prayers for our fellow Vaishnavas and other minorities in Bangladesh. Dear Lord Krishna, remember this prayer. Dear Lord Chaitanya, kindly bless and protect all the devotees and other religious minorities in Bangladesh. May the current social tensions be peacefully resolved, and may lasting harmony be established in the land of Bangladesh. Many are asking what they can do to help the devotees in Bangladesh. We are asking all ISKCON devotees and friends to offer their heartfelt prayers, especially this Sunday and over the next few weeks, for the well-being of ISKCON devotees and other minorities in Bangladesh. ISKCON is a peaceful organization, and devotees in Bangladesh contribute in many ways to their country. Unfortunately, some who don't know ISKCON well are misrepresenting us and our peaceful intentions. So earlier this week, the Bangladesh High Court rejected a plea to ban ISKCON. That's good, they rejected it. We are most grateful for the High Court, to the High Court for its decision in support of ISKCON. That's from Anuttama Das, our communications minister. So let's chant at least one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to pray for the devotees and actually all the people of Bangladesh. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. So you can make
Thank you very much,
announcements.
Maharaj, for such an enlivening class on the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and addressing the topic of personalism and impersonalism right down to the core, and accepting the conclusion of the Vedic scriptures as it is. And so, reminding us again one more time that we are all personalists, because that's how the Vedic literatures have actually asked us to do, and following the instructions that we receive from Maharaj, from Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So let us all chant one more time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's all thank Maharaj for the wonderful class by loudly chanting Haribol, 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 Hare Krishna. So today's feast, was there a sponsor? Yeah. So today's feast, we don't have any sponsor. So if anybody is so eager to sponsor the feast today, there is an open opportunity for you to do so. Again, sponsoring a feast is one of those things that we can offer to Krishna. It's part of devotional service, very much a personal devotional service to Krishna. Hare Krishna. So next Sunday, we actually have a Rath Yatra coming up. It's actually the Hillsborough Christmas Parade. We'll have a float. ISKCON of NC will have a float there. And we actually have the cart that we have actually gets decorated beautifully. And Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra, they actually are so merciful that they go out and they give their darshan to all the devotees out there. Everybody out there is chanting the Hare Krishna. We're distributing Srila Prabhupada's books out there. It's very, very nice and a beautiful event. More details on that will be coming out on the WhatsApp group. So I encourage everyone, please do join. We'll give you the specifics of the timing and the location. So please do join the Hillsborough